Disturbing news today. David T. Crowley, his wife Kamal, and their 5-year-old daughter Ronnie have been found dead inside their Apple Valley home in what police are calling an apparent murder-suicide. David Crowley is the writer and director of a movie in progress called Gray State. The trailers from the unfinished movie show scenes of a militarized police force, FEMA agents spying on and killing hundreds of Americans, gun violence, and citizen insurgency. The tagline for the film is, quote, the Second American Revolution may not be remembered, end quote. YouTube videos show Crowley promoting the film at several events, including at a Ron Paul rally in Florida in 2012. Crowley's former business partner, Mitch Heil, said Sunday he was heartbroken to hear about the deaths. Quote, he's been one of my best friends since high school, he said. The two men were friends in high school and then joined the Army together. After basic training, they were stationed in different places but came back together again in the Twin Cities to form a company called the Bullet Exchange, which trained actors to use weapons for film. Heil hadn't spoken to Crowley since September when they parted ways in business. He said it was normal for Crowley to hunker down to write and then surface several months later, so he didn't think it was odd that they hadn't spoken. Crowley was a charismatic leader and a very creative person, Heil said. Quote, when it came to business stuff, he was the brains behind everything. I was just there assisting him to reach his vision. Although Crowley had met with people in California about getting Gray State made, nothing had panned out. And Crowley met his wife while he was stationed in Texas, where she lived. They married shortly before he was deployed to Iraq. On his LinkedIn profile, Crowley said of his time in the military, quote, after 5 years I had enough and left to pursue filmmaking. They had a great marriage, Heil said. He was a great person, a great friend. Heil is listed on the Gray State trailer as the movie's director of photography. Actor Charles Hovell, who starred in the movie's trailer, contacted Heil about a month ago saying he had been trying unsuccessfully to reach Crowley. Quote, it's always great to have young, gorgeous people come to our house and look as happy as they are, said Hovell. They were gorgeous, and they had this happy, bubbly, and talkative child. The bodies may have been there for up to 4 weeks before they were found Saturday afternoon. Neighbors next door and across the street said they hadn't seen the family since before Christmas. The family's dog was still alive, but wild and aggressive when police arrived, said neighbor Colin Prochnow, who discovered the bodies. Inside the Crowleys' home on Sunday, a small tinsel tree sat on the kitchen island bar, and a string of garland hung from it. The sectional sofa in the living room was torn apart, apparently by the dog, the Prochnow said, as were several small stuffed animals on the floor. The mailbox and the front stoop were bare. Prochnow had assumed that the Crowleys had gone out of town for a while, and he had shoveled their driveway a couple times, even though they usually did it themselves. When Prochnow and his wife returned from an out-of-town visit, he noted the packages had piled up on the front stoop. Shortly after 12:30 p.m. Saturday, he walked next door to take the packages to his house. Prochnow rang the doorbell, but no one answered, except he heard a dog barking inside the home. When he glanced through the large front window, Prochnow said he saw 3 bodies on the ground with a black handgun next to them. Quote, to me, they just didn't look human, Prochnow said. Quote, he came home and said there were dummies, mannequins, on the floor, and a gun, his wife Judy added. She said another neighbor commented to her about the curtains at the Crowleys' home being wide open when usually they were closed. But neither the Prochnows nor Alice and Bill Hickson, who live across the street, heard any gunshots or a dog barking. Quote, never heard any yelling, never heard any screaming, a husband and a wife fight or anything like that, Colin Prochnow said. He did recall a night in December when he awoke to something that sounded like gunshots, but he never thought anything of it until he found the bodies. Kamal Crowley, his wife, was a self-employed registered dietitian who operated a business called Mind Body Dietitian. Her website said she offered services for everything from eating disorders and weight problems to autoimmune disorders and autism and fatigue. Her profile said she was an amateur cake decorator and she was active on Pinterest. She studied at the University of Minnesota, and her LinkedIn page shows she previously worked at Park Nicolette's Melrose Center specializing in treating eating disorders. Photos on David Crowley's Instagram account show him posing with an arsenal of firearms in his garage. One image shows him in a flak jacket, another in a gas mask. The neighbors had also seen guns in the garage, but they didn't know if the weapons and paraphernalia were real or props for his movie. Crowley's father, Daniel, who lives in Minnesota, said that he hadn't heard from his son and daughter-in-law over the holidays. Quote, "We tried," he said in a brief telephone interview. Real estate records show that the Crowleys bought their house in December 2013. The Prochnows said David Crowley seemed like a good dad and had a trampoline set up in the backyard during the summer. Their grandchildren used to play with the Crowleys' daughter. Alice Hickson and her husband Bill said they saw the father and his daughter playing in the backyard. Quote, "It's such a grisly, gruesome thing," Alice Hickson said. The neighbors said Crowley changed his appearance last fall, cut his hair short, and started wearing fatigues. Quote, We noticed the change in his appearance," Colin Prochnow said. Quote, "His personality didn't seem to change. We never got into any types of politics." By early Sunday afternoon, no police tape remained at the scene on Ramsdell Drive, a neighborhood of middle-class homes. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and the Dakota County Sheriff's Office are assisting the Apple Valley Police Department with the investigation. According to police radio messages recorded by mnpoliceclips.com, police reported finding the, quote, "obviously deceased bodies on the first floor of the home, along with a, quote, very angry dog. That dog looked thin, and he was already skinny to begin with," Colin Prochnow added. As we can see from these reports, there's no clear motive for this murder-suicide, and from all outward appearances, this was a healthy, beautiful family. The mainstream media is already harping on this man's association with guns, as can be seen in the Daily News article titled, "Gun-Toting Minnesota Screenwriter, Wife and 5-Year-Old Found Dead in Apparent Murder-Suicide." So it seems like this guy's death is already being used to push an agenda. I think any reasoning individual would find these circumstances suspicious, but I have no doubt that these poor people's death will be written off as a murder-suicide. This is a very troubling pattern that we've seen before with people like William Cooper, Michael Hastings, and countless others who speak up about the thugs and the criminals who run the United States. And I can only say, if I ever turn up in an apparent suicide like this, I hope none of you believe that bullshit. Well, that's all for now. Stay safe and don't be intimidated. I'll see you later.
In Apple Valley, where a neighbor discovered the bodies of a 5-year-old girl and her parents inside their home. The family had presumably been dead for weeks. Lindsay Sievert, just returned from Apple Valley, has more insight on this very sad discovery. Lindsay.
Rena, the last time the next-door neighbors remember seeing this family was before Christmas and became concerned when packages kept piling up on their doorstep. So yesterday, they decided to look inside.
And we just kind of figured that they had taken off and gone away for the holidays.
This white Rambler sat quiet for weeks. With such little activity, the next-door neighbors began to worry.
I rang the doorbell to see if I could get somebody to come to the door.
When a dog barked inside, the neighbors then looked through a window and asked us not to identify them after they witnessed something no one should ever see.
I looked and there was a gun on the floor.
And I saw like a heap of things, and then I noticed a human hand.
The neighbors tell us they found the bodies of the father,
David Crowley,
his wife, Kamel Crowley, a self-employed dietitian, and the couple's 5-year-old daughter. Apple Valley police call it an apparent murder-suicide. Neighbors knew little of the family except for David Crowley's screenwriting ambitions.
And he made a movie called Gray State, and it was about the militarization of the government.
2 years ago, Crowley, a military veteran, publicized the yet-to-be-released film on this internet program.
Hey, Gary, thanks for having us on. Yeah, definitely the Gray State is something that we can turn around and look at, in our own realities.
And whatever reality his family faced was hidden from neighbors, a tragic ending that may never be understood.
Shock. That you have something that happens like that next door, and you don't really know when it happened.
Now, David Crowley's Instagram account shows him posing with numerous guns. Neighbors say they'd also seen guns inside his garage, but didn't know if they were real or if they were just props from his movie. Rena, police may release more information tomorrow.
What an incredibly sad story, especially for those neighbors.
Yeah, so many